18.
Sometimes in March, NIMED predicted we'll have volumes of water, and as soon as that was done, NEMA convened a stakeholder meeting, looked at this prediction, and brought out the disaster implication of this prediction. Sometimes along the line in May, our offices at the zonal operational levels were asked to meet with state government with the aim of taking these messages to the grassroots.
The country is very susceptible to flooding, whether we like it or not. Prior to this time, 2012, we were blaming Cameroon for releasing water from Labdo Dam. This year, we monitored the Labdo Dam until this moment. They were still impounding. They didn't release when floods started in Nigeria. So the internally generated volume of water in Nigeria is enough to flood this country. And if that happens, what do? We have a situation where we can control this. We can control this. When NEMA comes into a situation like I feel very sad, is it possible for us to make sure that NEMA is not invited into a tragedy in the country? So that's what you should be thinking about.
We can't run away from disaster. Disaster is a consequence of human existence. Disaster is an integral part of nature. What worries one is that occasionally we enhance these disasters by our own actions. Nigeria is prone to natural hazards. The location of Nigeria, when you look at the map of the world, having in mind the oceans and the highlands and so on, we are bound to have these disasters.
A lot of these natural disasters are a function of the type of geology. And so before you start any construction, you have to first of all get a geological map of the area, because that tells you the vulnerability of that particular ecosystem regarding what you want to do. For instance, if you want to construct a dam, the first step is to get a geological map. What kind of geology do you have in that area? What kind of structures do you have? Because once you build a dam on fracture system, the integrity of the dam is already compromised.
We're vulnerable to desertification. We're vulnerable to massive erosion. We're vulnerable to sea incursion. So we need to really, really take note. This report just came out and it has shocked the world. And interestingly, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Guterres, in a recent statement said, how many times will the alarm bell have to blow before we take the necessary action to safeguard our environment?
All right, now those were excerpts from the comments by our guest when we discussed disaster management last Friday. On Good Morning Nigeria, we have other guests there with us now in the studios as well as at our network center. First, we'd like to welcome Mr. Vincent Onwe. He is Director, Planning, Research and Forecasting at the National Emergency Management Agency. Mr. Owen, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much and good morning.
Also here with us in the studios is Professor Saidu Muhammad. He is Director General of the National Space Research and Development Agency, NASDRA. Professor Mohammed Saidu, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
All right, and joining us from our Kaduna Network Center is Professor Emmanuel Adanu, Executive Director, National Water Resources Institute, Kaduna. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much.
We may have to start with you because you are also a contributor to the first segment, first edition of this program on flood. And I'll come this way. You were also a director in the Ministry of Water Resources. And we are talking about coordination among the relevant agencies concerned in the event of any natural disaster such as flooding. Now, in your opinion, who should lead, the coordination of the relevant agencies in the event of such situation?
Yeah, thank you very much. Who leads is always a problem. I know while I was in the Ministry of Water Resources as Director of Dams, and even prior to that time, I remember we were monitoring all our dams and also the waters that come from outside Nigeria into the country, and to see the effect of those waters as they spread within the country. Now, when flooding became an incident in Nigeria, very disturbing incident, we were collaborating with NEMA quite well. I remember I worked with NEMA on most of the flooding incidents there. But the major lead role, I don't know who has that responsibility now. Now, I believe that if, for instance, recently they declared emergency on flooding, and they say NEMA should, I was very shocked that the title is flooding, and NEMA should take the leading role in the emergency. If it is for relief, yeah. But what we should do is, if we are declaring emergency on flooding, we should do it so that the flooding does not occur. If it occurs, yeah, NEMA can come in terms of relief and other things that will at least save property and people from the effect of the disaster. But if you declare an emergency, we want to know the scope of the emergency you've declared on the flooding, the content of the activities that will be performed under the emergency. Then you know who is supposed to take the leading role. But the way it's just declared, we don't really know. Incidentally, when that was declared, I felt the urge that an assignment has been given to the Federal Ministry of Water Resources to see how they can control flooding in future, so that we won't have the problem of this disaster. But when we are told that it was NEMA to take the role, then we have now to change the content and the intention of that emergency. Maybe it's for relief that are necessary to curtail the problems people may have on flooding. But if you don't understand exactly what the emergency means, then it becomes very difficult. Let me just, when you are doing your newspaper analysis this morning, I saw flooding, and then they say emergency on agriculture. Who is to do what there? What is it? What's the content of this emergency? Are you referring to flood? Is it for us to stop flooding so that agricultural practices might not be destroyed? Or we should use the flood properly for agriculture? So sometimes the content of this emergency is not properly, so we don't even know who takes the role. That's my view.
Professor Adano, thank you very much. We'll return to you. Happily, we have an official from NEMA with us here in the studios. That's Mr. Vincent Owen. I'll introduce him. Mr. Vincent Owen, let's have your reaction to what Professor Adano has said. With regard to, look, first of all, you declare an emergency. What does that mean? And who takes the lead role? And when NEMA takes the lead role, how does that impact other agencies that ordinarily should be collaborators?
Well, thank you very much. I listened very attentively to what Prof was saying. The issue about who coordinates is not in contention. The National Emergency Management Agency, by the Establishment Act, is clearly stated that NEMA is not a first responder agency to any incident, but NEMA coordinates other stakeholders, when it comes to disaster management. Now, I'll give you an instance. When we got the various the seasonal rainfall prediction from NIMET and the 2018 flood outlook from NISA, NEMA quickly, some call for the stakeholders meeting. All the relevant key stakeholders were invited, to that meeting. The Federal Minister of Water Resources, Federal Minister of Health, Federal Minister of Agriculture, Federal Minister of even the UN partners were all invited, to look at, the predictions and the seasonal outlook as, stated by these critical agencies of government. Now, just like what my colleague said, NEMA came out in collaboration with the stakeholders on the implications of these, predictions from NIMET and NISA. Now, NEMA has the role to coordinate. So that is the first step that NEMA took. All these critical stakeholders were all invited, and we deliberated, and they are all aware, and we came out with a document regarding the implications, informing people on the implications of these, predictions. Now, our zonal offices across, were all, put on the alert to carry out this sensitization to the various states in collaboration with the state emergency management agencies for them to understand the implication of, what is, what has been predicted. So coordination aspect of disaster management is strictly the responsibility of NEMA, and I think NEMA has been doing that. Now, following all this, and we liaise very closely, as I mentioned earlier, with NIMET and NISA. Now, they came up with, these predictions, and we kept monitoring, as they monitor the water level rise. They will, intimate the agency, and will now circulate it to the various stakeholders. Then it got to a stage, to be precise, on the 15th, of September, when we got this water rise, the level keeps increasing. Now we quickly convened another stakeholders meeting, which was very crucial. And states were, crying out, look, our communities are being flooded, water is coming, and all things like that. At the end of the day, the stakeholders agreed, said, look, this situation is getting out of hand. Because it was, yeah.
No, go ahead. Let's conclude.
It wasn't just NEMA that sat down to say, look, we are declaring national disaster. No. It was,
okay.
And besides, let me just make a point.
Yes.
Now, the issue of who leads, if there's a document that we have, a plan, the Search and Rescue Epidemic and Evacuation Plan document, endorsed by all the critical stakeholders in disaster management. The lead agency
is NEMA.
Not NEMA. The lead agency to flood, responder agency, is the fire service.
So
NEMA coordinates.
I'm sorry, that's the point. Unfortunately, we don't have the fire service here with us. We didn't have them the last time we were discussing. Okay. But the benefit of the points articulated by Professor Adanu from Kaduna, he was with us when we discussed that, when we discussed the topic. Nobody is putting NEMA on the spot. It's for greater efficiency. Yeah. From what you have said now, there's a shift. Earlier, you indicated that, NEMA from its establishment powers has, the coordination. But when it comes to flood, it's the fire service. And persons are just wondering precisely what goes on. Professor Adanu has said repeatedly, for instance, that we have issues with dam management in the country. You invited the Minister of Water Resources as one of the stakeholders. Did you have persons come from the dam management side to give indication as to what the levels are with regard to impounding water, releasing water, and all of that? These are the little bits that, stakeholders and indeed our guests have talked about on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me just clarify an issue. There's no contradiction in whatever statement I've made here. Coordination is different from, I said NEMA is not a first responder agency. NEMA coordinates. The lead as a first responder to flood is fire service. It's very clear.
And that is so globally too.
Yes.
So globally too.
No, it's not done.
Okay.
It's not done. Just clarify the point. When you say, look, where have we seen the fire service in all of the flooding disasters that we've had?
So that's a question you should ask yourself.
No, that's what I'm saying. When therefore you are coordinating, I'm sorry, please, you take the question. Yeah. When therefore you are coordinating, what does that mean? How do you, kick the various agencies or get the various agencies to kick into your framework for responding to disasters?
Very good. Now, a national disaster has been declared, okay, which is, by implication, you're activating the National Contingency Plan, which is sectoral based. You have what we call the water, sanitation and hygiene aspect, nutrition aspect, protection aspect, agric aspect, the health, and all these are all sectors. By the time you activate the NCP, you're activating the various sectors. And let me tell you, if we have to have time, following the activation of the national the national and territorial emergency operation centers, we all went to the field together with these key sectors to carry out the preliminary assessment. What do these people need? What is going on in these camps, all these IDP camps? What are their water requirements, health issues, nutritional issues?
Let me stop you there, because this could be a topic for another day, because we have various aspects of it that should be touched, but time may not allow us to do today on this platform, because we would like to bring in Professor Saidu Mohammed of NASDA. So we're talking about coordination, synergy, between the agencies that should be concerned about emergency situations in Nigeria, especially when we have natural disasters. The National Space Research and Development Agency is a satellite-based organization. To what extent, has this organization been synergized with or coordinated in the event of natural disasters in Nigeria? Because I'm asking this question because many Nigerians do not understand or appreciate the efficacious nature of space technology in such situations.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Kurian. Over the years, the Space Agency had always participated in many of these programs. And the fact is that as a custodian of space assets in Nigeria, we registered Nigeria as a member of the Disaster Monitoring Constellation, which is an international organization. And the fact that we registered, we have always identified from the beginning the coordination role of National Emergency Management Agency. So we put ability to invoke the charter in the hands of NEMA. So over the years, these issues have come up repeatedly. See, the problem is that, what is the problem with us? There's always been a culture of being too territorial, and that people do not want to accept the reality. And if you trace the history, for those of us who have been in this system for some time, we understand that when we called for the establishment of NEMA, what in fact was that is a global trend to coordinate emergency activities. So in the event of any major disaster in Nigeria today, NEMA will invoke the charter, and within that, either our satellite or any of the member satellite of the international constellation will make the image available from the space agency within 3 days, and will enable NEMA to do rehabilitation and all the things they require to do. So these are the issues. And the question is, what should Nigeria do in this circumstance? We need to go a step further. There's a need for a national protocol so that we understand who does what up to the last details. And this is exactly what we need to do at this point, so that people should understand their roles. Let me also quickly, put another major problem in this country. We cannot make disaster a business or to benefit some people. Over the years, we've told Nigerians that from Nigerian satellite we have now covered the whole nation several times. So the satellite image is now covering the whole country. And by this, we have demarcated floodplains. We understand those areas that are vulnerable. So if you continue to stay there, it's at your own risk. When you take a patient from the hospital, doctor will tell you to sign. You are taking him away at your own risk. So we should need to go a step further. Come to us for your state and see areas you consider vulnerable. People should not live there. Please fence it and disallow people from going there, so that it's not a question of the same problem of people who were inundated with water this same year. Next year again, they are coming for compensation. 3 years time, they are coming for compensation. So that it should not be made to compensate, friends. So Nigeria should take seriously technical advice, which the Space Agency has provided, by what the satellite images has provided, and we have done analysis and we understand these areas that are vulnerable.
Well, Professor Saidu Mohammed, thank you very much for your response. I'm just wondering, part of what emerged from the first part of this discussion last week had to do with information sharing And you also just referred a moment ago to the silo mentality, where perhaps each agency is seeking to protect its own territory, and there is little or no information sharing, or the information, if shared, doesn't then get properly utilized. So what would you like to see with regard to information sharing, as well as cascading the responsibilities down to the last detail of who does what in an emergency?
First, our responsibility as a space agency is to make sure we provide satellite images and do the interpretation for Nigerians. What that means is that over the years we have done this. We have also produced land use land cover map for the whole country. What that means is that we have provided in black and white, demarcations. We have delineated all the floodplains in Nigeria, from the city up to the rural places. And these informations are now available. And not only that, we have forwarded to all the ministries. They are in the libraries, to all the universities. And that what we expect is that a little more effort, find out this or come to us. All over the world, people line up at the space agency. One, to find out what they need to do in terms of information about their farms, information about their city, to upgrade cities, and in terms of street, urban shelter, and the rest of them. Provide information on sea temperature to guide the fishing vessels or where to go to do fishing. But in our own case, not only that, they don't come, but we also go ahead every week. We're on television, advising the general public on what to do. We can't spoon feed anybody. As far as we're concerned, this information currently exists, and we have encouraged most of the states to establish geoinformation system, which is a platform to provide resource information. The issue is we continue to say Nigeria cannot continue to depend on oil and other things. You also need to find out what those resources that are in your state. And you know that in exploiting these resources, there are consequences. The consequences sometimes is disaster, and we need to manage them. We have provided this information. They are currently available, and you can come to us and we'll give them to you.
All right. Thank you, Professor Saidu Mohammed. That's trying to explain the adequate deployment of a satellite as a panacea for assisting in emergency situations, not just in Nigeria, but globally. We've just been informed that our guest in Benin just came into the studio, and they would like to introduce her. She is Dame Omoa Alonge Oni-Okpaku. She is the Honorable Commissioner, Minister of Environment and Sustainability in Edo State. Madam, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
You can hear us clearly, and we can also hear you clearly. But now let me ask you this question. We are talking about coordination and synergy among relevant agencies in situations of emergency, such as in natural disasters. Now, from state point of view, what should be the coordination level expected in the state and from the state in the case of emergencies such as natural disasters? In fact, give us an idea of what happened in Edo State in the last flood disaster in Nigeria.
Basically, what we had to do, of course, you understand that we've got the state SEMA, which basically tries to coordinate these activities and make sure that our people are okay. We really did not see a lot of federal presence, when these things are happening. I don't have a lot of people coming to us saying this or that. Our major help basically comes from either the World Bank or ECOWAS, or the state SEMA basically has to go searching for these things. But like I've heard on the program, these issues are things that happen year in, year out. And it's been happening for years now, over a decade, we still seem to be in the same position of surprise when it happens. We know that we're in a mangrove area. The federal government, the federal agencies know. So they know that we are susceptible to some level of flooding activities. And every year before that happens, during the rainy season, we always have to go seeking for this help. The last reliefs that we got basically came from ECOWAS. We had the ECOWAS group come around, go with our team and go with the SEMA head to the villages, especially around Edo North and Edo Central, to see what help and relief that we could give to our people. We couldn't sit down as a government and just fold our hands waiting for Abuja to come to us. We had to take the initiative up and look for help. But going forward, we know that we are going to have flooding issues next year. We all understand what the climate change situation is. It will be nice if we can, with these conversations, come together very quickly to plan for next year, so we don't have the issues that we have now. If we get communication and we know what it is that we can do before time, it makes it easier. You know, the running around, the indiscriminate activities that probably occur during those periods don't need to occur if we are prepared. I believe it's work in progress, and we will get there. But we would like to thank the ECOWAS group very, very seriously. We would like to thank the World Bank. They've been extremely helpful to us in Edo State as regards our flood issues.
All right, Dame Okpako, thank you very much. We're going to pause you in the meantime, along, of course, with the other guests. Take a short break. When we return, we'll come back to you to drill further into the issue with regard to your state emergency management agency and its relationship with NEMA and indeed other federal establishments that have a role with respect to disaster forecasting and management. Let's take this short break now.
United States Open champion, Naomi Osaka.
Chira looking much more promising in the second half. Great ball, Musa!
Ability does the rest. Look at this. What a finish that is.
Thank you for joining me. My name is God. Cooler game. The result might determine how long he's going to be staying at the end of the day. That's about it on Sports Update, brought to you by Davos Quizy Park. My name is Godwin Enakana. See you again next week. God bless Nigeria.
All right, welcome back. And it's still Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Let's return to our Benin Network studios, where the Commissioner for Environment and Sustainability of Edo State is still with us from our Benin Network Center. Dave Okpako, I said I was going to ask you a question with regard to SEMA, that is the State Emergency Management Agency. First, where is your SEMA domiciled? And then what is the relationship or the intensity of that relationship with NEMA? And thirdly, take this along with the first two questions. In terms of provisioning for persons affected by disasters, let's take flooding, for instance, which has occurred this year in Edo North and Edo Central. What has been done with regard to providing temporary shelters, which has been a major challenge, as well as, of course, other necessaries, including food and bedding?
Thank you very much, sir. First of all, the SEMA offices, apart from the fact that they are spread around the 18 local governments that we basically have, they are mainly domiciled in the government house. The government is very particular about the activities of SEMA and likes to sit on it. So we have the person who heads it working directly from government house and then coordinating the different centers, the different local governments, putting them together. Now, as regards the people who were displaced in Edo North and Edo Central, for us as a people, we have really become aware. We know that we're going to have these issues when they come, so we're usually prepared. Yes, we had shelters for them, and most local government chairmen had already provided, especially around the Esako area and Edo Central, they had provided for makeshift shelters even before the incidences occurred, because the people we had displaced, like the DG on the program basically said the right things. These people live around the floodplains, so they know what's going to hit them year in, year out. So they disturb their local government chairman. They make sure that the shelters are ready, and we had those shelters ready. Now, having shelters ready is one thing, but when you put people in shelters, we need to cater for them. We need to make sure that they eat, they feed. We need to think about what their children are doing. We need to make sure that these kids can continue going to school and their lives are not really adequately, totally affected. So as a state, we've, the governor is very passionate about these issues, and we've tried to put, we have a team called the Edo Best. We go out, that team goes out with these people to make sure that they make makeshift places. Children can continue their studies. Our shelters are there. When the issues subside, people go back to their homes, and then we are ready for it again next year. So, but like the DG, well, the SA in charge of SEMA basically had a conversation with me and said, you know what, we have a very great working relationship with NEMA. We know, I mean, he can function without NEMA. But what we're not saying is the functionability of what we're doing. What we're saying is it's work in progress. We just need to put a bit more effort so that whatever it is that we're doing can trickle down to the people who are directly affected.
All right, Madam, thank you indeed. If we have time, we will return to you. I will also ask the NEMA official here to also respond to some of the issues you raised with respect to the fact that there was no proper coordination between you and, of course, NEMA here in Abuja. But for now, let's go over to Kaduna once more, where we have Professor Adani. Professor Adani, you have listened to the contributions of some of our guests here this morning, and we'd like you to also make your contribution towards the fact that the issue of who leads in terms of coordination has been established, by NEMA official here. If you have anything against that, you let us know. But I'd also like you to speak to, because we're rounding off gradually, to speak to what should be done towards next year, that we also be expecting flooding. And also touch on what Professor Seidu Mohammed did say with respect to the contribution of satellite imagery in all of this.
Thank you very much. First of all, I have to agree totally with Professor Seidu. He said that we need to establish a protocol so that this protocol will be managing and, in fact, coordinating properly. If it is NEMA, it's NEMA, okay. I told you I've been working with NEMA. I know they are doing the coordination. But when you talk with some people outside those premises, some give some different views. So we are very confused whether actually they know that NEMA is taking that role. It's not that I don't know NEMA is doing it. I know. But when you start having other views about it, then you get confused. Who is empowered to do it? Now, Professor Saidu, there, if you don't know, he's the one that superintends over Nigeria. He has an area view of Nigeria. His agency can look at the whole country from up and tell you where certain things are, and also tell you what you should not do. But he restricts himself to that. If you give him more, he will do more. So that is the situation. Now for flooding in Nigeria, let me tell you the situation we're in today, in July, August, and September. When the cloud builds up heavily, all we do is preparing NEMA for disaster. We must try buying some relief materials and all that. Why do we have to get to that extent? That is what I've been talking about. Now, we know that most of the disasters coming in terms of flooding is from within Nigeria. Now, we have enough water. We know how to disperse them. We know the behavior of our waters. We can control this sufficiently to make sure that this flooding does not have the effect it's having on us today. The Federal Minister of Water Resources, for instance, is trying to construct certain dams to at least operate them sufficiently to reduce the volume of water into the veins that disperse water sufficiently for flooding in the country. When we do that, we operate the dams sufficiently for that. When we have more of these dams, NEMA will have some rest. That is there. Now, as I speak, we have not put that in place for us to mitigate that effect for next year. I know next year, if we have the same volume of rainfall, the pattern and the distribution, we're going to have the same problem. So if we're thinking for the future, it is for us to know how to manage the water sufficiently to avoid this disaster. And doing it is to have enough dams in the tributaries of our rivers, manage these dams very well, and then we relieve NEMA and the federal government of this stress we keep going through annually. And for us to achieve that, we're going to take a few more years for us to achieve that. And the government should declare emergency on construction of such structures so that NEMA, working together with us, and even the space agency, Saidu, I pity him sometimes because he might just be giving you enough information. He has an eye view, area view of this country. He can tell you where certain things can happen, especially in terms of surface movement of this. So if he tells you this constantly and you don't respond to it, he gets frustrated. That's the situation we're in. The management of disaster in Nigeria, today we're talking of flood. Recently we had earthquake or a tremor. That might come. And we are so oblivious of the fact that these are things that human beings cannot control. So if anybody tells you earthquake can happen in the country in future, it is possible. But how do we manage it? When in managing it, who do you go to? Who is the repository of the information? Who takes the information out? There are so many researches we are doing in the institute here. And all the polytechnics, all the universities are on our mailing list. We send this in to them. On no occasion have I heard any or read any information from these organizations telling you how do we cooperate. All I get is that, thank you, we're in receipt of your this. So how do you collaborate? Sometimes you want to sensitize people to work with you with the little information you have, which they don't have. They don't have a good response. And there's no way we can go out sensitizing more than what we are doing, putting them on our mailing list, sending this information to them, and we manage it. NEMA is going to be overstretched, and now it is becoming a program for NEMA, a disaster management in respect of flood. Can't we help this NEMA by making sure that these floods don't come on the scale they are coming today? Those are our concerns. All those different sectors that are related to this are worried too, because first, we know that there's a competition or demands for the funding that is available, sectoral demands. But the one that is causing disaster all the time, we're spending the money to remediate. So why don't we spend the money to prevent it? I think we should do that. I pity NEMA, and they're going to be in that position for a while, because we know climate change, rainfall is going to, we don't know what we're going to have next year. It might be more. And then we have the problem. So let's try to see how we can stop this disaster from happening. Thank you.
Professor Emmanuel Adano, thank you very much there for your perspective. Very quickly, let's take tweets that have come in from our viewers. Our Twitter handle remains at NTAGM. You can see it at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. Law Afasi has this tweet. It says, the meteorological agencies are getting it right by warning on disasters ahead of time. But governments and the people to be affected don't do enough. NEMA should brace up in rendering help to victims of natural disasters, and governments should also equip the agency with sophisticated equipment.
Now, we'll go to Mike Anyakwo. Yes, Mike Anyakwo. Response to natural disasters should not be done by government alone. It is collective responsibilities of all stakeholders of this country. Corporate and private individuals should complement government efforts in responding to natural disasters. Regulatory agencies should also monitor.
Yes, another one there from Mike Ayankwo, by the way. It says, adequate evacuation and shelters should be made available to victims of disasters. Relief materials should also be provided, and the camps should be decent.
All right, to Saad Abubakar, Nassar Saad Abubakar says, most of the recent floods that are called mostly man-made because of the waste people dump to block our water channels.
Dele Jack Solomon has two tweets. Let me take the first one and carry on takes the other. Government should annually organize programs through which information and ideas on effective disaster prevention, preparedness, response and recovery activities could be exchanged and orientation of concerned stakeholders.
Now, also from Dele Jack Solomon, frankly, in the long run, interest should be focused on activities such as local community outreach, using the community, the churches, and other religious organizations as a platform for the campaigns. And those were the tweets from our viewers this morning. And Kingsley, I think it's better we go to the NEMA official here, to Vincent Owen, Director of Planning and Research, to, of course, speak to some of the issues raised, especially by the Commissioner of Environment in Edo State, who mentioned that they didn't get enough collaboration with NEMA from the Abuja center here. So what actually happened?
Well, I thank her very much for that information, and it is surprising to me that the Edo State government has not received any items, whether food or non-food items from the National Emergency Management Agency. I'll look at it and know exactly what the problem is, because I'm very sure that all the states that have been impacted by flood, relief materials have been moved to those areas. So I'm very surprised, hearing this from her. Even for the fact that we even have an operational office in Edo State, in Benin to be precise. So we really have to look at that and know exactly what went wrong. But I'm sure, consignments of both food and non-food items, have been moved to all these states.
Including Edo State. Is it in your record? Because you're in charge of planning. Is it in your record that Edo State was captured, during that
all the
exercise?
states, all the states, all the states.
I'm wondering, Kieran, because Mr. Owen was talking earlier about NEMA's role in coordination, and they mentioned the fire service. We know there's a federal fire service and the state fire service. From what NEMA knows, because again, some of your colleagues who have come on Good Morning Nigeria have spoken with a great deal of concern about the level of preparedness and organization of the state emergency management agencies. Most of them, not all of them. That's the state emergency management agencies. What do you know about the readiness of the fire service to be a first responder or to be part of the activities that NEMA coordinates whenever disaster strikes, as we have seen, for instance, with regard to flooding? Do we have the fire service that has, raft equipment and other things to help evacuate persons, who are either drowning or about to drown?
Yes, I think that is where the gap is. It may interest you to know that even I led a team to Anambra State, to carry out the preliminary damage assessment. And in my team, there was a fire service official. And I think all other, teams that went across, the initial 12 states, to look at all the fire service were part of, that movement. So our worry, just as you are asked, I said there's a gap, and that is why we keep insisting to say, look, from even the meetings, the fire service will assure us that they are prepared. They are prepared, to confront any disaster, particularly, this flood we're talking about.
But when disaster strikes,
that is where the gap comes in.
All right.
I think it's time to go to Professor Saidu Mohammed. Prof, your agency has the capacity, to capture Nigeria aerially and be able to determine activities on Earth. And from what you have already told us, you have information. But how much of this information that you have are really bought in by the agencies relevant when you talk about emergency situations in Nigeria? Because they need your information and they are not getting it. What is the gap? What is the yawning gap between you and these agencies? Is this as a matter of not believing in your capacity, or a matter of ignorance with respect to what satellites can do?
Yeah, Kirian, let me put it right here. It's not a question of we're not giving them the right information. Like I said, not only do we provide information, we have also registered them as a member of Disaster Monitoring International. And during the Ogungba flood, we were there the charter was invoked. Within 3 days, maps were prepared for NEMA and they intervened accurately. During the 2012 flooding, we were also there. Satellite images were made available within 3 days. Processing was completed, and NEMA was able to intervene in all the states. Let me use opportunity once again that in the 21st century, there are certain things that must be done. For example, in one of the states, which I will not name, had flooding problem recently and invited international friends to come to help them. But on reaching them, the fact that they didn't have maps, they concluded it's a primitive society. The only thing they could do for them was to give them blankets and go back. You see, first, it's not a question of, when it happens, what you do. Certain basic things have to be in place. Geoinformation services will have to be in place. And let me also say, all over the world, a place like NEMA, which is key, and thank God their funding mechanism is good. They should also support in creating small Earth observation satellites, because we have a responsibility on a daily basis to monitor the drainage pattern and density in our country, so that we monitor and see the extent of problems. Another one is the fact that realize that most of the dams at the moment are silted up. They are now not able to cope with their carrying capacity, and that we need to provide this information for Water Resources Ministry. We need to provide information, land use, land mapping, and extent of coverage for the Ministry of Environment. The country of this nature should have a law that every 5 years, environmental sensitivity map should be developed to guide everybody. All these are key issues. Knowledge society must have that, and that is the only way. It is not when it happens people begin to fight because they don't have those necessary things to work with.
I'm wondering, Professor Seidu, just before we take our last set of tweets, I'd like you to, in terms of, again, coordination, because, Kirian, we keep talking about appropriate agencies generating information, but then how do you share that information, or how do organizations in need access the information? Professor Seidu, for instance, from what you've been describing, it appears to me that the Surveyor General of any state should have access to the information that you are talking about, that your agency is generating via satellite. Ministries of Environment should also have access to it. How can this come about? Do you attend the Council of State Meeting on Environment? Are you invited to the Council of State Meetings, say, a Council of Meetings of Works Commissioners, or those involving the Surveyor General's office, so that you can oblige them with this information, and then you create a channel that could be exploited from time to time on a sustainable basis?
Yes, I'm happy to tell you we'll be working with the Federal Ministry of Environment. The new map project, for example, is one that we have demonstrated beyond reasonable doubt that the two agencies or ministries must work together, and that we have done. We are the only agency of government at the moment providing carbon signatures for our country. That is made available to Ministry of Environment and the international partners. Not only that, Ministry of Works, yes, from time to time they do invite us, but we need to do more. And that a country like ours should have possibility for peer review. And people should be asked, are they doing their work?
All right.
Are they collaborating enough?
Professor Seidu, time is beckoning on us to leave the studio. Well, this discussion cannot be exhausted in one show. We believe that in the near future, we could be in a position to, of course, bring back this topic for more deliberations. And at this point, we'd like to appreciate our guests this morning. Let's begin with Vincent Owen, Director, Planning, Research and Forecasting, and NEMA. Thank you indeed for coming on the program today.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, Professor Seidu Mohammed, Director General, National Space Research and Development Agency. We appreciate your insight this morning on the program.
Thank you once again.
Now, Professor Emmanuel Adanu, who is always there for us from Kaduna or Abuja, Executive Director, National Water Resource Institute. Thank you indeed for your usual cooperation. Thank you indeed. And of course, Dame Omola Alonge Oniokpaku, Honorable Commissioner, Minister of Environment and Sustainability, Edo State. Thank you indeed, ma'am, for finding out time to be part of our program this morning.
All right, Kirian, our guests are gone, but just some of the last set of tweets that came in that we were unable to take while we still have the guests. Very briefly, we'll take this one from Sunday Michael Amakoji, one of our regulars. It writes, it's unfortunate that we have to wait for disasters to happen before we can think of what to do. After the flooding of 2012, a lot of literature was generated on how to build more dams, but 6 years down the line, nothing serious appears to have been done.
Now, Shomole says what to do to avoid the continued occurrence: introduce better flood warning, building systems by constructing buildings above flood levels, tackle climate change, increase spending on flood defenses, restore rivers to their natural causes, introduce water storage areas.
All right, those are the tweets that we can accommodate right now. We'd like to thank you for sending your contributions. And that does it for our two-topic conversation this morning. Let's go over now to the Weather Center to check out